Tower Records. How digital music killed the record store. Giant. In the summer of 1960, a 16-year-old kid named Russ Solomon was working at his father's small drugstore in Sacramento, California, when he had an idea that would revolutionize how the world bought music. Solomon noticed that the 45 RPM singles they sold as a side business were flying off the shelves faster than aspirin and cough drops. So he convinced his dad to let him set up a proper record section in the back of the store. That tiny corner display, measuring just a few hundred square feet, would eventually grow into Tower Records, a global empire worth over $1 billion at its peak. But this isn't a story about sustained success. This is the tale of how the world's most iconic record store chain, a cultural institution that defined music discovery for 3 generations, was obliterated in just 5 years by an enemy it never saw coming: the digital revolution. The Tower Records story begins with Solomon's obsession with music and his genius for understanding what customers actually wanted. Unlike other retailers who treated records as mere products, Solomon approached music with the reverence of a curator and the instincts of a hustler. He started staying open until midnight when other stores closed at 6, recognizing that music lovers didn't shop on a 9-to-5 schedule. He hired employees who weren't just cashiers, but music evangelists who could recommend obscure B-sides and debate the merits of different pressing plants. By 1968, Solomon had transformed his father's drugstore into a dedicated record shop, and the Tower Records brand was officially born. The store's motto, "No music, no life," wasn't just marketing speak, it was a philosophy that would drive every business decision for the next 4 decades. Solomon understood something revolutionary. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was identity, culture, and community rolled into one. His stores became gathering places where teenagers discovered punk rock, where college students debated album covers, and where serious collectors hunted for rare imports. The formula was deceptively simple: massive selection, knowledgeable staff, and stores that stayed open late enough for music to matter. The 1970s marked Tower's explosive expansion from a single Sacramento location to a California phenomenon. Solomon didn't just open stores, he created destinations. The legendary Sunset Strip location in West Hollywood, which opened in 1971, became as much a part of rock and roll mythology as the venues where the music was actually performed. Spanning 8,000 square feet across multiple floors, the Sunset Tower was where rock stars shopped, where record executives scouted trends, and where tourists came to experience authentic music culture. The store carried over 125,000 different titles, from mainstream hits to the most obscure international imports. Musicians like Elton John, David Bowie, and members of Led Zeppelin were regular customers who would often be spotted browsing the aisles alongside fans. The Sunset location generated over $10 million in annual revenue by the late 1970s, making it one of the highest-grossing record stores in the world. But Solomon's real genius wasn't just in creating big stores. It was in creating the right kind of big stores. While competitors focused on carrying the top 40 hits, Tower Records carried everything: classical, jazz, world music, spoken word, soundtracks, and imports that couldn't be found anywhere else. The stores were organized like libraries, with listening stations where customers could preview albums before buying. This wasn't retail, it was music education, and customers were willing to pay premium prices for the experience. The 1980s and 1990s represented Tower Records' golden age as the company expanded internationally and rode the wave of the CD boom to unprecedented profits. By 1986, Tower had opened its first international location in Tokyo, Japan, creating a 4-story music mecca in the heart of Shibuya that would become one of the most successful record stores in history. The Tokyo store generated over $30 million in annual revenue, proving that Tower's model could translate across cultures and languages. The compact disc revolution was pure gold for Tower Records. CDs cost more than vinyl or cassettes, had higher profit margins, and created an opportunity to resell entire back catalogs to customers who wanted to upgrade their collections. Between 1985 and 1995, Tower's revenues exploded from $90 million to over $430 million annually. The company went public in 1998, reaching a market valuation of nearly $400 million. At its peak in 1999, Tower Records operated 89 stores in the United States, and 107 international locations, generating over $1 billion in annual revenue. The stores had evolved into cultural institutions that went far beyond selling music. Tower Records sponsored concerts, published a respected music magazine called Pulse, and maintained relationships with record labels that gave them first access to limited releases and exclusive merchandise. A Saturday afternoon at Tower Records wasn't just shopping, it was a social experience where music fans could spend hours discovering new artists and connecting with like-minded people. But even as Tower Records celebrated record-breaking profits in the late 1990s, the seeds of its destruction were already being planted in ways that no one in the music industry fully understood. In 1999, an 18-year-old college student named Sean Fanning released software called Napster that allowed users to share digital music files directly with each other through the internet. What started as a dorm room project to help friends share songs quickly exploded into a global phenomenon that would fundamentally alter how people acquired and consumed music. By 2001, Napster had over 26 million users worldwide who were downloading billions of songs for free, creating the first truly massive alternative to buying physical music. Traditional music retailers, including Tower Records, initially dismissed file sharing as a niche activity that would never appeal to mainstream customers. They were catastrophically wrong. The appeal of instant access to unlimited music, combined with the ability to create custom playlists and share discoveries digitally, was irresistible to a generation that had grown up with computers. Even more devastating was the emergence of iTunes in 2003. Apple's digital music store offered legal downloads for 99 cents per song, providing the convenience of digital music without the legal risks of piracy. Within its first week, iTunes sold over 1 million songs. Within 3 years, it had sold over 1 billion. The music industry's fundamental economics had shifted overnight from selling $12 albums to selling 99-cent singles, and physical retailers like Tower Records were suddenly competing against infinite selection and instant gratification. The speed of Tower Records' collapse between 2001 and 2006 was breathtaking in its brutality. Revenue that had taken 4 decades to build evaporated in just 5 years as customers abandoned physical music stores for digital alternatives. By 2002, Tower's annual revenues had fallen from over $1 billion to $430 million, a decline of more than 50% in just 3 years. The company's stock price, which had peaked at over $20 per share in 1999, collapsed to under $2 by 2004. Tower Records was hemorrhaging cash at an unsustainable rate, losing over $90 million in 2003 alone. The company desperately tried to adapt by launching its own online store and reducing prices, but these efforts were too little, too late. Tower's business model was built around high-margin sales of physical music in expensive retail locations staffed by knowledgeable employees. Digital music eliminated almost every competitive advantage that had made Tower successful: selection, discovery, expert recommendations, and the social experience of music shopping. Customers who had once spent hours browsing Tower's aisles were now discovering new music through algorithm-driven recommendations and downloading songs instantly from their computers. The final blow came from declining CD sales across the entire industry. According to the Recording Industry Association of America, CD sales peaked at 943 million units in 2000 and had fallen to 619 million units by 2005. Tower Records wasn't just losing market share to digital competitors, it was operating in a market that was shrinking by double digits every year. Russ Solomon and Tower Records management made several critical strategic errors that accelerated the company's demise, but their biggest mistake was failing to recognize that digital music represented an existential threat rather than a temporary trend. In the early 2000s, when file sharing and digital downloads were still emerging technologies, Tower Records had the brand recognition, customer relationships, and industry connections to potentially become a major player in digital music distribution. Instead, the company doubled down on physical retail, continuing to sign expensive lease agreements for large store locations even as foot traffic declined precipitously. Tower Records also failed to leverage its most valuable asset, the expertise and recommendations of its staff. While online retailers were developing sophisticated recommendation algorithms, Tower had thousands of music experts whose knowledge and passion could have been translated into digital platforms. The company did launch an online store, but it was essentially a catalog of physical products rather than a reimagined digital experience. Tower Records also made the crucial error of treating digital music as a complementary business rather than a replacement business. Management seemed to believe that customers would continue buying physical CDs while occasionally purchasing digital downloads, failing to understand that digital music wasn't an additional option but a superior alternative for most consumers. The company's financial structure also made it particularly vulnerable to rapid revenue decline. Tower Records carried massive inventory investments, maintained expensive retail leases in prime locations, and employed large staffs of full-time workers. This high fixed cost structure worked beautifully when revenues were growing, but became a death spiral when sales declined rapidly. The human cost of Tower Records' collapse extended far beyond financial statements to encompass the destruction of a unique cultural ecosystem that had taken decades to build. When Tower Records filed for bankruptcy in 2004, it wasn't just a business failure, but the end of an era in music culture. Thousands of employees who had built careers around their passion for music suddenly found their expertise obsolete in a digital world. Many of these workers weren't just retail employees, but genuine music scholars who had developed encyclopedic knowledge of genres, artists, and recording history. The Tower Records stores had served as informal universities where younger music fans learned from older collectors, where obscure artists gained exposure through staff recommendations, and where record labels could test new releases with knowledgeable audiences. The bankruptcy proceedings revealed the full extent of Tower's financial devastation. The company owed over $200 million to creditors and was burning through cash reserves at an unsustainable rate. Liquidation sales began in 2005, with desperate customers snapping up inventory at deeply discounted prices while longtime employees watched their life's work being dismantled. The iconic Sunset Strip location, which had been a cultural landmark for over 3 decades, held its final closing sale in December 2006. Lines of customers stretched around the block as music fans paid their respects to an institution that had shaped their relationship with music. International locations were sold to various buyers, with the Japan operations continuing under new ownership, but the original Tower Records chain in the United States was completely eliminated. Tower Records' extinction wasn't just a business story, but a preview of how digital disruption would reshape entire industries over the following decades. The company's collapse demonstrated how quickly technological change could eliminate businesses that had seemed unassailable just years earlier. Tower Records had survived the transition from vinyl to cassettes to CDs, adapted to changing musical tastes from rock to punk to hip-hop, and weathered multiple economic recessions. But digital music wasn't just another format change or economic downturn, it was a fundamental transformation of how customers discovered, acquired, and experienced music. The same forces that destroyed Tower Records would go on to devastate other physical media retailers, bookstores, video rental chains, and eventually challenge traditional retail across numerous categories. The Tower Records story also illustrated the double-edged nature of business moats that provide competitive advantages. The company's massive physical stores, extensive inventory, and knowledgeable staff were enormous strengths in a physical retail environment but became crushing liabilities when customers moved online. The expertise that Tower's employees had developed over decades became largely irrelevant when customers could access infinite information about music through digital platforms. Even the social and cultural aspects of Tower Records, which had seemed impossible to replicate digitally, were eventually replaced by online communities, streaming platform recommendations, and social media sharing. The legacy of Tower Records extends far beyond its bankruptcy filing to encompass fundamental questions about the relationship between technology, commerce, and culture in the digital age. While streaming services and digital downloads provided unprecedented access to music, something irreplaceable was lost when Tower Records disappeared. The serendipity of discovering an unexpected album while browsing physical shelves, the expertise of passionate employees who could recommend hidden gems, and the social experience of sharing music discoveries with fellow enthusiasts were cultural experiences that algorithms and digital platforms have struggled to replicate fully. Tower Records represented a model of retail that prioritized expertise, curation, and community over pure efficiency and convenience. The company's employees weren't just selling products but fostering musical education and cultural exchange. In today's world of infinite digital choice and algorithmic recommendations, there's a growing recognition that curation and human expertise retain unique value. Some entrepreneurs and investors have attempted to revive physical music retail, opening small-scale record stores that emphasize vinyl, limited releases, and community events. But these efforts remain niche markets compared to the cultural influence that Tower Records wielded at its peak. The Tower Records story serves as both a cautionary tale about the risks of digital disruption and a reminder of the cultural institutions that society loses when efficiency becomes the primary measure of business success. Russ Solomon, who died in 2018 at age 92, lived to see vinyl records experience a surprising resurgence among younger music fans who valued the tangible experience of physical music. But by then, the infrastructure and expertise that had made Tower Records a global phenomenon had been lost forever, a victim of a digital revolution that transformed how humanity experiences one of its most fundamental cultural expressions, music.